A digital detox, that it was really interesting sort of concept to me. I know you've done, like, you've gone through like studies of it and stuff. Like, what is it, something that we should be doing, digital detoxes, and trying to stay away from social media?
Yeah, so let's put a clear dividing line because it will help us think about these issues. Let's put a clear dividing line between work related communication technologies and non work related communication technology because I've dealt with both in different books. So we're thinking about the world of work, we're thinking about email, we're thinking about Slack. That's what I dealt with in my most recent book. That's what we were just talking about. The book I published a few years ago, however, Digital Minimalism, was working on or looking at tools in our personal life. So social media, our phones, etc., like life outside of work. In that realm, suddenly the individual response really becomes very important. So when it comes to why we're checking email so much, we have to, as a team, change our rules for how we collaborate. Otherwise, I have no recourse. I have to check it. When it comes to me looking at social media too much on my phone, unrelated to work, now the locus of control is coming back towards the individual. That's where we're going to have the biggest, shortest impact is dramatically changing your individual relationship to your tool. This would not work in the world of email. If I dramatically changed my relationship to email, that's going to be a problem if no one else does too, because they haven't and they need me to respond or we can't get back to the client. But when it comes to me checking Twitter, I can make a change and get an immediate benefit. And I'm not enmeshed in a system of other people need me to be on Twitter. So in that book, Digital Minimalism, I argued we have to be much more intentional about our technology use. You have to know what you care about and what you want to spend time on. Then you work backwards and say, how do I want to use tech to support these things I care about? Once you know which tech you're using and why you're using it, it's much easier to put rules around it. I'm using Facebook because Facebook groups, because I belong to this group of other triathletes, and it's an important group to me. And I need to know like when the training schedule is. Oh, if that's why I'm using Facebook, now it's real easy to see, well, I don't need it on my phone and I don't need to look at the news feed. And so I'm going to put it on my computer and I'm going to put in a plugin that scrubs the news feed clean. And all I use it for is checking this group. And if all I'm doing is checking this group, I only need to do that once a week. It takes 15 minutes. Great. I get that benefit, and Facebook has no other footprint in my life. Like, so when you know why you're using a tool, like what you're trying to get out of it, you can put rules around it. And suddenly the cost benefit ratio is way, way in your advantage. And so, yeah, I talk about in that book doing this 30-day declutter. And the idea is you just take 30 days away from most of these optional tools, these personal technology tools. And during that time, you very aggressively try to answer the question of what do I actually want to spend my time doing? I mean, you actually go out there and try things, you experiment, you sign up for things, you join things, you go to things, and then you also reflect. You just think, let me try to figure out my life. Like, what do I want to do? What do I really want to spend my time doing? And then at the end of that 30 days, here's a critical part, you rebuild your digital life from scratch. All right, now that I know what I'm all about, what do I want to use to support that and what are my rules? And you come out of that experience with a completely different relationship with your tools. This is much more effective than trying to just come at it from a negative perspective and say, I use Twitter too much, I'm going to try to use Twitter less. Good luck. We know that's not going to be very successful. But if you instead have this crystal clear image of what your life wants to be, you can feel it. Like, I want my life to be like that. And you have a plan for how you use technology to make your life like that. And that plan doesn't involve Twitter. Now it's much easier to not be using Twitter because what you're doing is not just trying to stay away from something bad. You're instead trying to pursue something very appealing. And that's a much more stronger psychological motivator.
I think the pressures of social media, like trying to, at the moment, there's a lot of like trying to share your lifestyle. If you don't share it, it didn't happen. The ego comes into it. What did you see when you did the studies? Like, what were the results?
So with social media, for example, I found that, and I should qualify the study was, I had about 1,600 people at least initiate this. Not everyone made it through, but about 1,600 people initiated going through this process. And I used the reports to help inform the book. Maybe about half the people, this is rough, about half the people came out of this exercise, rebuilt their life, rebuilt their technological life around what they cared about. About half the people had no social media in their life when they were done with this. They just, when they looked at the things they cared about, none of them really required them to be on a social media platform. The other half of the people had some sort, at least one social media platform was reintroduced back into their life because there's a way in which it supported something they really cared about. But because they were working backwards from this is what I want out of this tool, so they could then put clear rules on it, most of those people who brought some social media back in their life did not bring it back to their phone. Because once they knew, oh, here's the real value I get out of this tool, they realized, oh, this has nothing to do with self-documenting. This has nothing to do with having a ready source of distraction when on board. And so it became something that was on their computer that they used for very specific purposes. And so there was definitely a significant move away from, I think, the two biggest uses of these platforms right now, which is some combination of performative self-definition and distraction. And by distraction, I mean like the complete avoidance of any discomfort, boredom, or time alone with your own thoughts, right? Those two uses of social media basically disappeared for people who made it through this process.
What does that do for somebody, like being able to then get in touch with that sort of emotional self?
It unlocks everything. We underestimated, especially for young people who've had social media since they were, in their young adolescence. We underestimated the importance of reflection. So time alone with our own thoughts is where we make sense of our life. It's where we confront the things we don't like. And it's where we try to make sense of the things that resonate and figure out why they resonate. It's where we build this structure for understanding our life, who we are, and what we're trying to do, that we keep updating and complicating as we have new experiences and new information. And all of this takes mental time. It just takes time when you're on a walk and you're thinking, you're driving and you're thinking, you're waiting in line and you're thinking. And it's where we begin to build our lives. We build who we are. We figure out what we want. We see the challenges we need to face. This gets taken away when you get in the habit of, I don't like being alone with my own thoughts. I don't like boredom. Swipe, ooh, that's a little uncomfortable. Tap. When we do that, we lose all of that time we need to define ourselves, figure out our lives, and figure out what we're all about. And so it's almost as if for a lot of people, they are able to emerge into a fully formed personhood for the first time once they take this out of their life as a constant presence. And I'm not even really being hyperbolic about it. What you have when you're taking every down moment and using this phone is what you have is this sort of weird, shattered simulacrum of a personhood, where it's just a bunch of these liquid images of yourself, different impressions, careful curation, all based off of this sort of tactile feedback of likes and unlikes and retweets and unretweets and attacks or promotions and what emojis are being used and how is this being received. And it's this weird fragmented self that has no depth to it, that's not rooted on anything. And you can't build a resilient life on that. You can't build a meaningful life on that. And when you replace that with thought and you figure out yourself and what you're all about, it's a completely different experience of the world. It's like you're coming from 2D into 3D. You're coming from dark into light. It's leaving Plato's cave in the Republic. And I'm being a little hyperbolic, but not really. For a lot of people, that is what it feels like when they get their mind back and they get more used to their mind, the good, the bad, the stuff they're afraid of, the stuff they're proud of, and they figure that all out. You can't get around that. You can't distract your way around that. We do that with our phone today. In other parts of history, we've done it with other substances. We forget that when prohibition came to the United States, it was in part because we were consuming a massive amount of alcohol to get around of the dislocation and discomfort of the rise of industrialization and the change of society. We were trying to escape it. We're doing the same thing today. We've just replaced the bottles with screens. But it gets us to a similar place. You can't avoid yourself, what's going on, what you like, what you don't like. It's in the confrontation of that you actually build the meaningful life. And it requires you to put these things in their place.
The thing that concerns me is, I would say, even for myself, my generation, the likes, like the what you're describing is a portion of my life. But for the generation after me, it's some of those kids, it's like all of their life, like it is this all they know. Do you think it's going to reach a boiling point, or do you think that it needs action, like direct action with it?
So my optimistic theory is this moment that we've emerged in it, roughly the last decade, where we see the emergence of these giant platform monopolies built on these attention economy models. So the Facebook and the Instagrams, the Twitters, and now TikTok has entered that fray. The idea where this is this dominant piece of our technological and cultural lives, I don't think it's a permanent state. I actually think the position of cultural dominance that these platforms has is quite precarious. They probably are already past their peak of cultural influence. They just don't realize it yet. And in other words, what I'm saying is 5 or 10 years from now, I don't think we're going to have 3 or 4 giant social media companies and everyone spends their time using those social media networks. It's a particular moment in time that we're going to move past. One of my big arguments for why this is the case is the social media companies, they originally had a network effect argument. So their argument was, if you're Facebook in 2012, is you want to connect to people you know. You can do that over the internet. Facebook makes it easy, though. We have this very nice interface, and most of the people you know are on Facebook. And so we have a sort of monopoly, because I'm not going to join another network if my cousin's not on there. But if my cousin's on here, then that's useful, right? So they have this network effect benefit. And they were offering something that was pretty unique, which was, oh, we have the internet enables connections around the world. Let's make sense of that, make it easier for you to connect to people. They left that model. They left that model right around 2012, where they shifted. This is when they shifted from trying to build their user base to try to get more active user minutes from their user base. They had to do this because they're going public. They had to get their revenue numbers higher, so the initial public offering would be better received. They brought on Sheryl Sandberg to figure out how to do this, and they shifted away from this model of Facebook as a place to connect to the people you know, and they shifted to the newsfeed model. Okay, it's going to be a source of distraction. You all are just in our matrix style factory producing content and data for free. We will chop it all up with algorithms, create this hyper palatable slurry of newsfeed type nuggets, and you can just infinitely scroll past them. So we are something you can tap when you're bored, and our algorithms have selected the stuff. So again, like the matrix, we pulled it out of the minds of hundreds of millions of users, and we chopped it up, and it's optimized to press some buttons and you'll feel something, and it'll be distracting and whatever. This made sense in the short term, because now you could use Facebook all the time. Like it's something that's always there. It's not just, oh, I need to see, if Jordan has posted something on his wall, let me go to his wall. No, it's like this feed is always here. Instagram has the same model. TikTok just threw off all the social aspects and just like, let's purify this model. The issue is now they're competing with every other source of entertainment. So it's no longer, oh, we offer something that no one else can, which is the people you know are here and will connect you to it. It's like, no, this is a source of entertainment. There's other sources of entertainment, though, like what you're doing right now, podcasting, right? Okay, I can find a podcast on something I really care about, people I care about, talking about people I care about. Look at the streamer wars. Hundreds of billions of dollars being invested into incredibly low cost to view super high production value movies and TV shows and series, and all of this stuff is on our fingertips now. And what happened to digital online connection? Well, everyone just moved that over to text message threads. Yeah, they're like, okay, I guess I'll use either WhatsApp, which is why Facebook bought it, or text message threads. I don't really need a special network to do that anymore. So I think social media is a very precarious place. And people are like, Twitter and Facebook like touches some buttons and it's hyper palatable, but I also like this podcast I'm listening to, and I also like, the Marvel stuff on Disney Plus, and it's competing with that. And actually, this stuff feels a little bit better quality, and this stuff is kind of making me feel bad. So that's my optimism. I'm not bullish on the future of these particular giant platforms as like for the next 50 years are going to be dominating our discourse.